I spoke with Michiel Hofman. He's a senior humanitarian specialist at Doctors Without Borders. I asked him for his response to the Pentagon's announcement.
The response is that, of course, we've always asked them to be transparent about their own investigations. But what we learn from at least their summary, because obviously we haven't had a chance to read all 3,000 pages of the report yet, that still many of the questions that we have about the protected status of medical facilities are still left unanswered, which is exactly why we were asking for an independent investigation, because this report conducted within their own parameters actually doesn't answer some of the crucial questions that we had right from the start.
One of the questions that has to come to mind, the new head of the U.S. Central Command said that the center was on a no-strike list, but that the crew did not have access to the list. What does that tell you?
Well, that's exactly one of those questions, Mark, that we have. What is the point of a no-strike list if you go ahead with a strike anyway, even if your equipment is failing and you can't verify anymore what are civilian targets, especially since this was an airstrike in a densely populated area, in an urban area, which is actually quite exceptional in the conflict in Afghanistan. So you would imagine that you would take even more care than usual to avoid civilian targets. Yet all these equipment failures apparently were not enough reason to call off this strike. So that is one of the big questions that are unanswered for us.
Of course, this report comes on the heels of the hospital bombing in Aleppo. I just want to get a sense of how your staff is feeling now. I mean, and also, is this something that, since we're seeing this happen more than once in two theaters now, is this something that should come before the UN body? I mean, does there need to be some kind of action taken, do you think?
Well, absolutely, and this is not just in what you call theaters. Yes, it happened in Afghanistan. It happens on a, unfortunately, very regular basis in Syria, but it's also happening in Yemen. 3 times an MSF supported hospital has been struck by airstrikes. It's happening in Sudan. It's happening in Iraq. It happened in the past in the Ukraine, and the list actually from the last 2 years of the number of hospitals that have been struck either by airstrikes or destroyed by other types of violence is horrendous for MSF. For MSF hospitals and supported hospitals in 2015 up till now, it's 75 times that this occurred. So the urgency to reaffirm, not just in Afghanistan, but in all situations of conflict, that hospitals are protected places is very obvious and very urgent, and yes, including for the United Nations Security Council.
Let me ask one final question before you go. Are you going to keep pushing for an independent investigation outside of what the Pentagon came back with?
Well, absolutely, because the big questions that are unanswered, the one of the crucial ones is, of course, whether or not this constitutes a war crime. Whether it does or not, we don't know. It's not only intent that defines a war crime, but also gross negligence. And it's unimaginable to conceive that a internal investigation would conclude, in terms of facts, anything in the direction of this question, because I don't think anybody would accuse themselves of a war crime. That's why I think it's in everybody's interest that it's an independent body that in Kunduz and elsewhere makes these investigations, because neither from our side or from whomever perpetrates these attacks can be expected that we have the full picture.